And good morning to your April 16th daily situational awareness briefing with Indigenous Emergency Management news you can use. We are going to dive into today's current conditions in regards to flooding, wildfire, all those kind of topics. I'm going to pull up my briefing notes, which are all available on our Patreon. So if you are even a free member on our Patreon, you can access all of the notes that I'm using today to refer to. And they will, the Patreon post also includes a list of all of the links for all of the resources that we are providing and referencing, including all of our sources for all of this information. So if you can share this, please do. It will help propagate the briefing. And if you miss part of this briefing or all of it, you can also access it through our YouTube channel, our Patreon, and it is uploaded to the homepage of the hazardscape.com website. So let's start off with the daily flood map review. And it's flooding kind of took a little bit of it got a little bit better the last couple days with the cooler temperatures and that causing some snow. The most urgent life safety situation in Canada right now for First Nations is still Peguis First Nation in Manitoba. They're on basically a high alert, I'll call it. And you know, their chief Stan Bird has warned that residents and volunteer crews may be running out of time to pile thousands of sandbags around homes and buildings before their spring flood. And the Manitoba government itself has warned that Peguis First Nation will likely need to be evacuated owing to the severe risk of flooding. So even now the Manitoba Minister of Infrastructure has confirmed an evacuation is very likely, even if flooding only cuts off road access. So, you know, when we talk about situational awareness, we want to take a look at, you know, where that land is. Why would the government kind of state that? So we're going to break it down. I've kind of shown this on the last few briefings, but it's always good to reiterate because we're using Peguis as basically a use case right now because it's real time. So based on the current conditions of flooding, you can see here with the community that the red is where that's the kind of the 1 in 25 year flood risk level. It's the extreme risk in a 25-year return. And it, like you can see, it cuts off, it doesn't just cut off road access. It basically, you know, I don't know what the right word would be. It just annihilates it in a way. Like, I would say that when you say cut off road access, you know, what kind of visual comes to somebody's head? Well, maybe it's just like half a kilometer, 2 kilometers. But when you start looking at the road, the highway, and parts of the community, you can actually see that it's a lot more significant than just cutting off road access. It takes out kilometers and kilometers and kilometers of highway that is critical for them, right? So, you know, why is Peguis at such a high risk? Well, Manitoba's hydrologic forecast center is reporting increased flood risk that in the Interlake region, including the Fish River Basin, due to significantly above normal snowpack and the delayed spring melt. So with that increased likelihood of rapid runoff combined with the regular spring precipitation, snow water equivalent in the Fish River Basin is almost 113 millimeters, which is double the long-term average. So peak flows could rise to similar levels that they saw in 2022, which was a 100-year event, meaning about 60 centimeters higher than 2014, if you're from that area and are familiar with these dates. So as of the reporting that was done on Monday, there was 110 filled sandbags, and Peguis Nation had declared, they were relocated in 1907 under a surrender of land to the federal government, which, because the Crown said that was later deemed an illegal move. So really, again, it comes up to the government put the nation where they are in that flood area. And there has to be, due diligence and support on the government side, right? And I want to highlight this, and I'm not going to say where I was yesterday. Oh, you were in Peguis yesterday. Do you want to give just a little comment on how that was? What you're seeing on the ground? If not, I understand. Because where I'm going with this is I was in a nation yesterday that has severe flooding and their roads are disrupted. And the government is basically telling them that they're not going to fund the situation they're in right now, which has tens of kilometers. I drove through my truck and took some pictures, and it was brutal. But the government is saying, oh, well, you didn't maintain your roads, blah, blah, blah. We're not going to support you. Well, Canada, the Crown, has not done so much in our country right now to mitigate wildfire and floods, but they are responding. So the government can't pick and choose where it wants to support and not support. You can't tell a First Nation that they haven't taken care of something to the level of the Crown if the Crown is not only not supporting them, and if the Crown is also not meeting that standard. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I doubt the Minister of ISK listens to this TikTok, but if you are and if your team is, I'm absolutely disgusted with my government when they're telling First Nations they're not taking care of things well enough to a standard, not supporting them, not helping them through the years with that, not even maintaining their country to a level of standard that keeps us mitigated to disaster. It's absolute atrocious. I don't even sometimes have words to portray my frustration with hearing that from a government, right? And it's also too, like I always say, I don't get super frustrated with the individual people in the government because I think a lot of them are truly trying to help, but they're handcuffed by the system and their policy. But they still have a choice to advocate and stand up and communicate the risk and the need to support a First Nation within their departments. And sometimes I just think that, again, they are too comfortable in their jobs. They don't want to take risks. They don't want to piss off the deputy minister, the assistant deputy minister, their boss, because then they might not get a career opportunity. And if that's the case, then you shouldn't be in government, right? You shouldn't be working for the Crown if you're at your desk too worried about your career. You're a public servant. You are a servant of Indigenous peoples. You're a servant of the treaty, servant of the treaty rights. You need to be doing everything in your power to communicate and fight for that support. So that's my kind of little rant there on that, but I want to keep to the briefing. So in terms of flood risk, Peguis, in terms of Indigenous communities, Peguis is the highest risk and the one that we're following along mostly. But you can see here, Canada, in terms of current conditions, there's a lot of flood risk. And if we look at like the future, where could Canada flood at an extreme risk of a 1 in 25 year return period? That's kind of all the red. And it's under probability. If you're using probability and predictions, between now and 2060, there's a high probability right now that these areas will see some flooding. So enough about that. Let's move on to, well, we'll go into wildfire because that's kind of the next hot topic right now. We did see some new starts in British Columbia, or I don't know if that one's new. I think it's I'll zoom in as close as I can down here, just along Chilliwack. I think that's Highway 1. So there was a new start yesterday at about 11:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. It was very small fire, but again, a new start. Not sure what it was, and it's being held. So not a big one, but again, you can see in BC where those are. New Brunswick has kind of calmed down a little bit too. They had a few fires reported, and now it's kind of weird because they had some reporting into the west yesterday, but those little dots are gone. So I don't know if that's like a data integrity issue or what. This map I'm using from Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Center, it's a new one that I'm using, and I've just seen some weird things go on with it that I'm not sure if I'm fully trusting it. So where I like to go for something that I should trust is the Canadian site, and this is the Canadian Fire Weather Index site, and I'll pull up the fire danger right now for Canada, so you can kind of see when you're in the blue, that's a low fire risk, and when you're getting into the yellow to the red, that's very, very like getting into high to very high. So obviously, I'm going to zoom in here a little bit for you, but BC right now is the hotbed for fire in that kind of central, getting even into the east side, right? It's fire danger is. We'll go to the fire weather index here. Here's the fire weather index. So the blue is a 0 to 5. The yellow's getting into a 6 to 15 rating. And I'll go over the fire weather index as a component of the Canadian Forest Fire Weather Index. It is an indicator of the intensity associated with a fire spreading through a conifer forest and is used as an indicator of the difficulty of control. High values indicate higher intensity and larger flames. So when we're looking at where that exists, that's where. And if you're, we can get into a lot of other things, right? Like here's the fine fuel moisture code. And this again is also a component of the Forest Fire Weather Index. It tracks the moisture content of the very fine, dead surface fuels that carry surface flaming in a conifer forest. Higher values again mean drier conditions. So really, really dry through there, like a 76 to 84 on the scale. 93 plus is like really, 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 really bad. So if you're in BC, yes, it is that is crazy. Like it is so dry. But I mean, for BC, that is also kind of like their desert Kamloops area. So it is a dry place, but still, this is extreme. You have Kitimat highlighted. Kitimat, I can zoom in there. Maybe for them, it would probably be a little bit. I'll just go with the fire danger. So I think Kitimat, I know it's a little bit harder to reference on this site because it doesn't show the municipalities, but I think Kitimat, it's probably more in the gray to blue, if I'm correct. I think it's well above Vancouver, the tip of Vancouver Island, Prince Rupert, right? So it's probably in that gray area, which right now means the fire danger is below low. Does the fact that it burned a lot in past years mitigate any risk or heighten it? That's a good question. It really depends. So I would say, going back to like, what kind of forest is it? How long ago was the fire? Uh, how quickly is it growing back, and what is growing back kind of all feeds into that. But, and it also depends too on how was the area reclaimed, and how was any neighboring communities around that treated after the fire. So I would say yes, it should mitigate and help with, future. But even then, there's no guarantee, because even with a large wildland fire, if it's a crown fire and the trees were kind of jumping at the top, there could still be a lot of surface level vegetation and dry um, vegetation and dead vegetation that wasn't touched, right? But if it was like a surface level fire and it never got into a crown fire, well, then lightning, there could still be a chance that lightning strikes. And like we saw in Jasper, Jasper was a crown fire that just went from lightning on the ground to a crown fire at the tops of the trees in about 48 hours, right? So it kind of depends. I'm not a wildfire behavior expert. I kind of just know some terminology and pick it up along my career. That's why whenever I work with a community, we always bring in those experts to survey it, or we talk to the elders or the land guardians, because they will know for sure. But I say I tend to always go with no, just because a forest fire or wildland fire is ripped through an area, it does not necessarily devoid it of risk. Northern Saskatchewan, no, I'm just kind of highlighted right there. So right now, if we're looking in terms of northern Saskatchewan, Reindeer Lake area, if you can kind of get a general sense. Right now, Saskatchewan's not too bad, especially in the mid to north in terms of fire danger. They're all pretty good. Like, that's the fire weather index. Even if we go to right now the drought code, like it's pretty dry in the south. I would say if we look at drought for Saskatchewan, you can see here where up north it's abnormally dry, but it's not dry enough that it's registering on the drought code for the forest fire weather index rating, right? You have to kind of look at these different indexes and systems together and in separate parts, right? Because they also, what constitutes a drought, right? It sort of, in a way, feeds into the fire weather index, but the fire weather index isn't looking at necessarily reporting abnormally dry for a drought as a high, as a high kind of, it wouldn't increase the index that much more. I'm trying to kind of explain it in my terminology. I'm trying to, I think I'm going to bring on a like wildfire behavior, some experts to kind of come and do a live talk about some of this, so they can answer very more specific details better than I do. I'm a general emergency manager. So, but I can help you get to a level where you're literate with these tools and the terminology, and then you can, advance through this process and learning process just like every other emergency manager, if that's what you're looking to do. So we could even look at the fine fuel moisture code, which is, again, this tracks moisture content in that fine dead surfaces. So if you look at Jasper, right, if you kind of eyeball in Jasper, again, this map isn't, I'd want to dig in a little bit more. You can kind of see, let's just see if I can zoom in here. Let's see, when did it do that? Nope, go back. Ooh. Critical failure. All right. Okay. So my question would be, you see that little along the Rocky Mountains in Alberta, you see that little kind of gray area that crosses the Alberta border into BC? Like, I wonder if that's Jasper. Let's look at, I'm going to go to Google Map. This is so this is what you would call like emergency management nerd level. We'll see if we can kind of pinpoint it. Okay, so there's Banff. Whoa, you guys, I got to keep it in the center of my screen for you guys. Okay, there's Banff. So we see Valemont. So, oh, maybe not, eh? It might be a little bit, could be. I'm going to do a little tiny bit more research on that just for our own interest, but that's Jasper's pretty north of that. So I'm going to say that Jasper is still reporting like low, and there's that little yellow spot there. Which is a 76 to 84. So even though they've had fires through there, they're still risky in that area, right? Just to kind of try and give you some examples, which you're asking really good questions. So thank you for that. But yeah. So yeah, that's that. I'll also go in and say Canada's coming off 3 consecutive severe fire years. Experts say 2026 season may get off to a relatively quiet start, but lingering drought and warm summer could tip the scales again. We're not really seeing too many signs of unusual activity through April, says Richard Carr, a wild research analyst from Natural Resources Canada. But again, southern BC, southern Alberta, southern Saskatchewan are exceptions, having already seen wildfire conducive conditions emerge. A recent Health Canada review estimated that smoke exposure during the 2023 wildfires could contribute to around 400 acute and 5,400 chronic premature deaths. Even far from a fire smoke possesses a serious health risk. So what they're saying is, even though you're nowhere near the fire, if there is still a high, if air quality in your area is still, not great, they saw 400 acute and 5,400 chronic premature deaths. That's pretty high, right? For fire smoke. Like, that's a pretty significant number. Where's my little Zoom thing? Fix it. And actually, I did a podcast from some research that also is linking wildfire smoke to an increase in violence because of the impacts that the smoke has on the nervous system in the brain and a few other things. So, yeah, I think in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see a lot of research come out about fire smoke, and I think that it's not trending to a positive. It's trending to, obviously, is the let it burn policy still in effect? Sorry. I'm going to say I don't know. I will find out. But I want to say I don't think so. If it's way, like if we're talking hundreds of kilometers from any sort of infrastructure or built up community, probably. But once it gets in within a vicinity, no. So I don't know what's going on, like in the the government might say no, but in reality, as they're managing these startups, they might just let it burn, which is an operational decision, a tactical decision versus the higher level policy, right? And it also depends too, like if there's a lot of fires going on and resources can't attend to a large fire that's not close to anything, then yes, they let it burn. That's an operational decision, not necessarily a decision of policy, because that's where things get muddy, right? You can have all the policy in the world, but if operationally and tactically you don't have the resources to fulfill it, then that policy is not going to be followed, if that makes sense. So that's why I kind of like to say, what do the policy people say? What do the operations say? And then you get kind of a holistic picture of how that is managed in real time. So this is a good segue for all, if you are in a Indigenous community, a remote community that is prone to flood or fire risk or smoke or any kind of a natural hazard like that, then again, query your administration, ask who your emergency management coordinator is, ask what they're doing right now to be planning, ask where your evacuation centers are, where your welcome centers are, what's the plan. Talk to your family about a go bag. You don't necessarily have to put it together right now, but just keep a checklist of what you would grab and go. So if the time comes, you've got something to refer to and you're not scrambling and panicking last minute and grabbing things out of the blue. So I will put a template on our Patreon with this briefing of a grab and go checklist for consideration. But I know like a lot of families, they can't afford to take some food and put it into a bag or a box to go. Like they need that food right now. And they can't afford to, put some things into a like medication. They can't afford to go and get secondary medication just in case. So what I like to do is just keep that checklist. And if you got, half an hour to get ready and evacuate, where to go to the pantry. You grab what you can. What maybe family heirlooms you want. That you're going to grab, maybe your great grandfather's pipe and put it in the bag, as opposed to grabbing. And I've heard people say this. They're like, I don't know why I grabbed this blanket. I bought it 3 years ago, but I left my grandmother's quilt on the chair. So it's good to have all of that planned out before, right? And it's just a simple checklist to keep it on your fridge. Know your evacuation routes, right? Just know which way you're going to go. And I know for so many remote communities, you might not even have an evacuation route other than a airport. So most of you who live in a remote flying community, I am assuming you know where your airstrip is. I would hope you do. So, but query your administration, query your employer, ask your employer, what do we do if the whole region evacuates? Do we have remote work policies in place? Most do. Ask those really, really tough questions and enhance your situational awareness. That's all it is, right? The more you know, the better prepared you are. So looking at extreme weather, we've still got a lot of weather statements in the prairies. 15 to 25 millimeters of rain throughout this green area, right? 10 to 15 centimeters of snow. Then we get down into Manitoba, Saskatchewan, snowfall warnings, more snow. Winter storm coming in Thursday morning through Friday. It's not April, folks. It's Christmas. Merry Christmas. Fog advisories. Fog advisory for Ontario. And then again, the southern Ontario and southern Quebec just getting hammered with rainfall. Right? So you look at all these special weather statements. I'll take off the indigenous lands for a bit so you can just see where like a lot of that weather is happening. So keep an eye on, like I said, I was out at a First Nation yesterday that is experiencing basically their roads are incapacitated. They're laying rig matting across so much of their roads just to keep them going. And with the added moisture and all of this, it's not going to help. Like 25 to 40 centimeters expected. Southern Saskatchewan, if you're kind of in this belt. So, I mean, it's good, right? When we look at the drought map, that continued precipitation is going to help for the short term. It's not going to help for the long term. We would probably need, this level of precipitation through the spring and summer. I've heard some people from the government say we would need this to continue for like 4 to 5 years before the current drought conditions kind of go back. We go back to normal, maybe how we were back in the 2000s, late 90s. Like we would need 5 solid years of above average precipitation to get back to where we are. But then you're seeing some areas where the water tables are full. I was talking to I forget who I was talking to. They were telling me in their community the water tables are full. And when you look at the drought map again, obviously like the places in white are normal, I'll call it. So some of those places might even be, obviously having some flood risk if their water tables are high and they're getting a lot of moisture. Okay, so situational awareness. Caribou numbers in Quebec are falling fast. I want to move into some sort of Indigenous public health alerts. Yeah, First Nations and Inuit leaders are considering whether to pause hunting to help the herds recover. Quebec government has yet to make a final call on a potential hunting ban. As of early 2026, we're still tracking 38 active long-term drinking water advisories in 36 First Nation communities, affecting thousands of homes and community buildings. And this is despite the federal government having committed to ending all long-term advisories by 2021. So they're 5 years behind on that. Don't forget, if you're filing your taxes, April 30th is the deadline. They want to remind First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples to file their taxes. Even if your income is tax exempt under Section 87 of the Indian Act, they're still asking you to file every year to keep receiving benefits and credit payments. You need to file your taxes by April 30th to keep receiving benefit and credit payments. If you owe money, there's no penalty for filing after the deadline. ISK announces major investments. So we've talked a lot about this over the last little while. I'm not going to dive into it other than it's kind of smoke and mirrors again. Their funding and budget, it's just kind of a I'll bring up the brief what I'm reading from here just if you want to see. This is available on our Patreon. You can download it if you want these specifics for your own briefings for your nation. There is one note here. FireSmart Community Fund and Supports Program has transitioned to the 2026 winter-spring closed intake. All applications must be submitted by April 30th. So if you're looking for FireSmart Community Funding and Supports, you've got 2 weeks for that. APTN in April 13th. So AFN rejects RCMP regret for Indigenous surveillance. Yeah. Well, that's good. That's good. That's good. Before I get into the good news, I like to end with the good news. What else did I have here? Oh, weather outlooks we did. Yeah, Cache First Nation, they're still dealing with their cryptosporidium outbreak that has affected and displaced 1,800 residents who are living in hotels across Ontario. There were 90 outbreaks related cases of crypto, and Chief Wesley stated there has been 6 direct or indirect deaths since the crisis began. So, when you can't even get clean water, right? What did I pick up here for weather and environmental hazards? Manitoba, the Icelandic River forecast has been updated to a high risk of flooding due to recent snowfall and anticipated late spring runoff. Ice jamming related flooding remains a concern along the river. Icelandic River forecast. I'm going to have to check where that is. Yeah. What else? So yeah, some of the, if you have any questions, put them into the chat for sure. Still, some of the good news we're tracking. Kiwewin First Nation in Northern Ontario launched a community-based emergency first response team that enhances communities' ability to respond quickly and effectively when medical emergencies occur. Indigenous Nurses Day was on April the 10th, and Métis women share their ceremonial tobacco. So Métis women in Calgary grew a beautiful crop of ceremonial tobacco in her yard and gave it away for free to her community. That's pretty cool. So she's a citizen of the Manitoba Métis Federation with ties to St. Paul de Métis, and the Red River Settlement considers tobacco a gratitude plant. Well, I think I think you would say that's fair. So, Owen. Yeah, that's kind of what else have I got? Fire weather index I covered. Key emergency contacts. If you need Indigenous mental health support, Hope for Wellness is a good quick action number. I'll put that in the chat. If you need help with your mental health, there's Indigenous programming. So coming up, dates to watch, and if you're in Saskatchewan, I think tomorrow is the deadline for the EMAP grants. If you're in Saskatchewan, I've been working with one community to help get their grant submitted. We've got a pretty good template for it. So if you're with the Saskatchewan Nation, I don't know if the other regions put deadlines like that on the EMAP funding. It's not even really a deadline. It's just they like to get it in now because they only have so much money, so they don't want. I don't want to get started on the grant program. It's not fair. Like, how ISK actually determines who should get what based on the very limited funds they have for mitigation and preparedness. I think it's very subjective, and they kind of gatekeep it, right? And I think they just need to get to a place where they're providing consistent long-term funding without this need for nations to have to kind of apply annually and then compete with each other. No nation should have to compete with each other for grant funding. Because I think ISK is trying to figure out, well, who's at most risk. Well, you can't really figure that out if you don't have one picture of everything, and they don't have that. So I think what they do is, I don't even know what they do. I'm trying to find out. The government process for putting out this money is ridiculous, right? And I know you all know that, but Munya has to complain sometimes about that. Yeah, so if you have any questions, let me know. If there's something I haven't gone over, if I haven't gone over in these briefings, let me know. Some really quick announcements. You're going to see this come out yesterday. So if you're following Terrence Bear with Always Moving Forward on TikTok, his podcast that I recorded with him came out yesterday. He's talking about Indigenous youth positivity, how he's trying to get a program going. He's actually developing a leadership sort of training, which is he he opened for this guy yesterday. Where is it? Right here? No. Yeah, this one. We also did a webinar yesterday with Stacey Dorr from Siksika Nation on Indigenous culture and emergency management, and Terrence came to open for him. And then after, Terrence gave us a rundown of the module he's building for leadership, and it's actually it's good. Like it's kind of like a coaching approach, a facilitation approach that I think will be really valuable. And I told him to share it with us. We might even consider it for our emergency management coordinator training as a leadership component, because it's very well thought out. He doesn't take the approach of telling youth how they need to be. He just walks them through questions, open-ended questions and considerations for them to kind of evaluate and think critically about their situation and what they want to do, and then backs that up with some motivation and mentorship and like support and like keep on going, keep on going. And it's good. That's the approach. I really like that approach. And then we have another podcast that came out the other day with Eagle Feather woman Tanya Turenga. You can follow her on TikTok on Indigenous-led change management and her program, and how she's working with some very big companies to instill Indigenous knowledge as part of their reconciliation strategy to make some really big corporate level changes that are affecting Indigenous economic development, and is even helping to support getting insurance on reserve for a lot of on reserve homeowners that can't get insurance today. So those are all going to be on our YouTube and Spotify and our Patreon. You can listen to those anytime you want. I will also, this briefing again is also being recorded and is going to be put up on all of those channels with all of our training that we've got going. And then hoping, I know I keep saying this, but I'm hoping tomorrow now, like if my web hosting server company can get some changes I need on a database, I'm going to be doing a live stream on here with our briefings and walking you through the Indigenous Emergency Management System that we've built. It's an online emergency management system for First Nations, and Inuit can use it. We're doing some updates specific for Inuit and Nunavik. It's a little bit harder for Métis because they don't have, they're not within the Indian Act and stuff like that. So, your girlfriend's from Cache. Is she doing okay? I hope she's okay. And I'm going to run some demos, and then I'm doing kind of this radical open thing where I actually discuss what we charge, how we're going forward with our pricing and rates and everything. Good morning from Mishkiomang Ojibwe Nation, MON. Thank you. Good morning. And if you want to know what we charge as an organization to work with First Nations in terms of projects, fractional services, our emergency management system, our training, we're going to be very open and transparent about what we charge for our programming. That's coming out. 2 months ago. Yeah, I had Cache, and I can tell you right now, I'm very, very sure that we can. What a normal consultant or contractor would charge a nation for 100 hours, which is usually anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 for 100 hours. I think we can get that down to like $1,000 or $1,500. And I'll show you how we're doing that with technology. And I'll show you how we're doing that with remote support like this, right? So the question is, I asked nations, would you rather pay a consultant? Well, usually they send in two. Would you rather pay two consultants $350 an hour each, so $700 an hour, to be in your community for 8 hours? Or would you rather pay for support through HazardScape like this, where you can have us remotely and we could come in your community for like $85 to $100 an hour if we have to come in person. But if you want us remote, it actually gets down to like $30 to $35 an hour. Our philosophy is, if ISC is paying for an emergency management coordinator at about $90,000 for an annual salary, then our equivalent support shouldn't exceed that. Like, we should be able to do what a full-time on-reserve EM coordinator can do for $90,000. We should be able to do that remotely for you or them, because we don't need to be there full-time and we don't need to charge you $350 an hour. So, and I sincerely think that, just because we're charging less, it doesn't mean the support is less or not valuable. I think we're actually bringing more value to the table than what a $350 an hour consultant brings to the table with their team. So watch out for that. We're going to be super open, radical about our programming costs and things like that. And then you can always give us feedback. Like, what else do you want to see on these briefings? Exactly what services do we offer? So we focus on a lot of emergency management planning, program design and development, which leads to an emergency management plan, disaster recovery preparedness planning. So helping nations move from what they have today to scale up to a team that could manage a 5-year disaster recovery that exceeds hundreds of millions of dollars. We do incident command system training. We do wildfire evacuation, like any kind of evacuation, flood, landslide, tornado simulations. We do emergency coordination center team building. We do resilience-based risk assessment training, fire protection services assessment training. You get access to all of the applications that we build for these, so you can manage and report, on your reserve or in your community. We do mentorship, coaching. We give our training to the communities we work with. So the example I'll give is when we go in and train a community on our 4.5-day basic emergency management course, that training stays in the nation, right? So the PowerPoint, the facilitator guide, the student guide, all the activities, all the content, all 9 modules get branded with the nation's logo and colors and symbols, because when we work with the nation and develop the training off our foundational basic training, it's not ours anymore. It's the nation's. It's their information. It's their data. It's their stories. It's their response emergency management system. When we're done training there, it's theirs, because we build it in real time, if that makes sense. So I've showed it on here before, but I'll show you what one of our PowerPoints looks like. Whoa, that's really big, isn't it? This is what's unique about what we're doing for Indigenous communities. Because I know there is no other contractor, no other type of consultant out there, firm out there that does this. And because they like to make the money. So you notice this is just a white PowerPoint. There's no HazardScape logo on there. Gotta make it even bigger. The learning objectives, everything is white label, Munya label. That's Munya label. We bring in some other Indigenous, but everything. So by the time this is done, we incorporate, like, what tools does your community use for emergency management? I don't know what your community uses, but once we start working with you, we learn, and what you have and what you're developing to, that goes into the training package. This then gets branded with your community's information, logos, colors. And if there's somebody in the training other than the emergency management coordinator that is really, really motivated to want to learn how to train this, then we have a facilitator guide, and Stacy does a train the trainer with them, because This isn't rocket science. This basic level isn't rocket science. Anybody can teach it. Once they get a little bit of mentorship, go through the course, it is left for you to teach to your community at will, right? And your region. So this is the module 1. We have 9 modules, very basic stuff, and it is the communities. And that's part of our regular training kind of fee. Like we don't say, hey, we're going to train you for 10 grand. And then to get the training left in your nation and everything, it's another 5 grand. We try to do it all, build it all at the same time. And then what happens is annually we'll issue some updates to the curriculum based on some new research. And then you're free to update the training however you want. But what we find is, because we're also working with communities doing planning, once that plan is at a point where it's approved by chief and council, then we can insert a lot of that plan into the training and then insert it into, some explainer videos just for the nation membership or whatever kind of content you want. Do we help people find work? Not officially, no. We are working with some First Nation peoples that want to work with us, meaning they have a little bit of experience either because they were a wildland firefighter or they were a land guardian or fire guardian, or they even were an emergency management coordinator, or maybe they were, like, I'm working with one gentleman who has done a lot of healing work. He does sweat lodges. He's also taken some emergency management training. And once he's done his certificate with post-secondary, he's going to be talking to some communities that he knows to start up helping them, but he's using us as kind of like a back-end business support. So that's how we're helping him find work, because he wants to be kind of self-employed a little bit. So what we offer is insurance. Monbo pays Canada. We offer like professional liability insurance and workers' compensation. So for Indigenous people that want to run their own emergency management business and they need help, we can get them on. Is this just to help me make a plan for natural disasters? No. We focus on all hazards, all risks. So we look at the United Nations. They have I think it's 281 or 261 risks and hazard classification. We look at all of those with a community. And it doesn't mean that the community is going to have all 281, but at least then we can consider everything, find out how it's all connected, focus on the highest risks, and go from there. So no, this is not just natural hazards. It's under all all classifications of hazards and risks. From what you gather, they train people in emergency services. With that training, they can find work. Oh yeah, well, you can find work with us. I mean, we've helped people like in our training through coaching them with getting their resumes sort of outfitted for an emergency management job. Like it's kind of like what I say, like we provide, think of us like this sort of Indigenous emergency management call center. Info, Indigenous to Northern BC sounds interesting. Yeah. We're kind of like, think of us kind of like this Indigenous emergency management call center where you can just contact us and get information and support for anything in this emergency management realm. Right? Like on our Patreon, through these TikToks, through text, email. Like we provide that support to our members. And that support through our Patreon, like all we're asking from Indigenous peoples, if you need a lot of that, it's only $7.25 a month, right? There has to be some sort of commitment on your end to want to gain our support, because we can't just do everything for free. We're not funded by the government. We're funded by like grassroots, essentially. And we're funded by grassroots people that want to work with us and get our support. And we do our best to keep it as low cost, because the grassroots guide us in what to charge, if that makes sense. Like, I could do the same work in 3 different communities, but there might be a slightly different fee scale, because that community is either very well off economically or not well off. And their economic viability shouldn't dictate what kind of support they can get. For Quebec, this is complicated. What can you expand on that? In what you mean it's complicated? Like emergency management's complicated in Quebec because it's Quebec, or because you're from Quebec City? Are you Indigenous in an urban area? Kind of, those are the questions I have. Bonjour. That's all I know. Yeah. For the emergency is complicated. Yeah, I mean, it is the dealing with the emergencies, and sorry, that's the only French I know, I think. Other than pamplemousse. I love the grapefruit. It's learning basic emergency management, getting familiar with the terminology, getting familiar with the process and the strategies. It's not rocket science, right? Yeah, where the hard work in emergency management comes is actually the relationships and managing and coordinating all the different people and all the different resources, and being in that constant churn of, actually, I texted a good quote here to a friend last night. So the shift for a lot of people, you're welcome. Thanks for your support. Thanks for attending. The shift for people that needs to happen is realizing that emergency management is a 4-phase cycle. The rhythm, you need to stop living in permanent reaction response mode. So emergency management is a cyclical rhythm that helps you get out of constant crisis. And if you're dealing with people who only care about when the sirens are already wailing, about if they only care about when something is an actual emergency, they've already lost. And I see that way too often in First Nations. They sit and wait around for the sirens. Once the sirens are on, then chief and council start banging their fists on the table at Indigenous Services Canada, and people start paying attention. But you need to do all of this way before those sirens turn on. And if you can get to that place within your community and your emergency management system, then you're winning. Right? Again, I have been to several communities where they bring me and Stacy in like 3 weeks into the emergency, a month into the emergency. And then they want us to start fixing things. And that's where I already say I'm like, we can help you going forward, but we can't fix right now. We can help you start getting structured and in a good place and organized for the future and dealing with the current situation, but nothing's going to get fixed because you're basically on life support. Yes, Sloan Moore, that is exactly it. The culture in Canada, at the government, at the crown level, is still wait until the sirens turn on. And that is the system that we're up against. But that's why we're making our support, our Indigenous Emergency Management system, so efficient and cost efficient and productive, I think we can get out from under that government system at the grassroots level if we all work together. And community by community, person by person, change that system just a little bit so they can get out from under it. And I'm talking to somebody in Saskatchewan right now extensively. He's an elder. He is finally seeing the potential of getting out from under the current response mode. Like he said to me yesterday, he's like, this is going to make a big difference. Like he is starting to see it. And they may not have seen it a few months ago because they were so focused on not being like they were lost, right? And I think they knew they were lost. And then just through these TikToks, they found me on TikTok, funny enough. And now I'm part of the team there, even though I'm still in Edmonton helping remotely. And they haven't paid us a dime yet, right? Like, that's kind of what we're doing. It's grassroots level like that. And if the government would support that, great, but they don't like to, right? Like Sloan Moore said, it's just the sirens turn on, then they pay attention. So, yeah, if you want to be a part of this, it's right now it's just a commitment, right? It's just a decision to want to engage, want to partake, want to learn. If you are an emergency management coordinator, even if you work in a community, a health center, band admin, regardless of your job, you have a role in emergency management. And even if you're in finance, even child and family services, hello, Count Cracula 25. Even if you work in child and family services, health center, public works, infrastructure, grant writer, like it doesn't matter. You have a role in emergency management. Emergency management is part of your responsibility, even if you're not doing it 24/7 in your job. It's no different than like project management, right? You want to have some literacy in it. You want to be able to have just a little bit of knowledge. So when an emergency management coordinator is hired in your community or is finally, comes to talk to you to sit down about planning, then you can have a conversation with them and help them with that plan, right? You might even be like a finance manager who sits on an emergency management planning team. So if you watch some of the YouTube videos, if you watch Stacy talk about on-reserve emergency management and how it can help the nation as a whole, he's got a very good perspective on how nations can use disaster and emergency management to get out of the cycle they're in with current crisis mode. It's going to take a lot of work, but it can be done. So yeah, if you want some more info on that, then the Patreon link is in our bio. You can sign up for free. That gets you quite a bit. Munyao pay $15 a month. Indigenous people pay $7 a month. And then it's up to you on how much you want to learn, absorb, engage in what we're doing, because it will get fairly involved once we launch our online emergency management system application, especially if you're like firefighter, fire chief, deputy fire chief, and a volunteer. If you want to learn how to manage a fire service, then from like strategic to operational side, because most firefighters, fire chiefs are very good at the tactical. If you want to manage it from a strategic operational side, then the application we've developed is going to train you through an entire structural on-reserve fire management system. So you can lead better, so you can become a better leader, so you can get the funding, equipment, and the training that your personnel need whether they're volunteers or paid or whatever. It's all about a management system. Even the emergency management application or assistance program, I think I could bring it up because I've got it running on my local machine. So tell me, do you want to see the EMAP management system first or the fire? You guys tell me if you'd rather see the fire services or the emergency management one. First one to put in their comments gets to choose if you want to pick. If not, I'll pick EMAP. All right, ding ding. Des standing ready. That's a good name, standing ready. Dude, you are ready. Okay, EMAP. If you'd like a demonstration of the HazardScape Indigenous Emergency Management System, while I did a live run through of some of the applications, I'm not recording them at this moment, but if you would like more information or a demo, please reach out. And thanks for listening. See you tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time.